everybody. Welcome to tonight's Glenbard Parent Series program. I couldn't be more excited about welcoming one of my absolute favorite authors tonight. This is, as many of you know, the 25th year of the Glenbard Parent Series, and we took the opportunity to welcome back some of our favorites. And that, of course, is Julie Lythcott Haims. So I'm so glad you're here. Thanks to all the sponsors who make this possible, all of our annual sponsors who are listed here. That is the Emmy Gaffey Foundation, Prevention Leadership Team of the DuPage County Health Department, Birth to 5 Coalition and Carol Stream, the Holiday Inn, the Case Special Ed Cooperative, the Goodman Sabrin Goodman Center, the Glenbard Early Childhood Collaborative, Kiwanis, and the College of DuPage, who's helping us live stream tonight again. Anyone who is a Glenbard parent knows about the Glenbard Parent Series, and we work really hard to let every family know, near and far, that this is your parent series. Programs are always free. There's never any registration. We have programming for early childhood families as well. Please help us spread the word. Our request to you is to like us, comment about it on Facebook, and share. Tell a friend that the Glenbard Parent Series is here for everyone. We have some exciting program that's coming up that I want to mention to you. Next week, we have Dr. Chandra Gill. She will be talking about her very important book, Blackademically Speaking. That is March 23rd. That will be at 7 p.m. So we're hoping that we'll have lots of students that will come to that night. That will be a special message for our students of color, but everyone. We're all going to learn from Dr. Chandra Gill next Tuesday. So please come back. Following that program, we have a distinguished roundtable on social justice with Kasim Rashid, who is one of our own from Glenbard South, and Jonathan Mendoza. Kasim just wrote a book about Ramadan for children, and he'll be discussing his book, Talk to Me. Following that, a friend of Julie's and mine will be talking about her latest book, Thrivers, the 7 Teachable Habits, Traits that Set Happy, High-Performing Kids Apart. Matt Dewar is going to give 2 presentations on mindfulness on Wednesday, April 21st. And we're going to end the year with another book tour by Jessica Leahy, the author of The Addiction Inoculation, Raising Healthy Kids in a Culture of Dependence. Jessica is the author of the book, The Gift of Failure. Some of you may know her from that program. Those are 3 important books coming up, and that gives me a chance, and we'll talk about this again, but those books and the books tonight that we're going to talk about are available at Anderson's Bookshop, which is in Naperville and Downers Grove, as many of you know, and also the bookstore in Glen Ellen also has these 2 amazing books that you definitely want to have in your library. I have 3 copies of this if anybody wants to borrow it, but you'll want to have your own, and then this is a must-have. Julie is going to be sharing her talk tonight, and we've got some students who will be sharing some of their questions and concerns. So it should be an interesting hour. Julie Lythcott Haims believes in humans and is deeply interested in what gets in our way. She's the New York Times bestselling author of the anti-helicopter parenting manifesto, How to Raise an Adult, which gave rise to a TED Talk that has more than 5 million views. Her second book is the critically acclaimed and award-winning prose poetry memoir, Real American. Circle your calendar for February 6, 2022, when Julie will be back to talk about that book, Real American. It illustrates her experience as a Black and biracial person in white spaces. A third book, Your Turn, How to Be an Adult, will be out April 6, 2021, and she's here to talk about it tonight. She's a former corporate lawyer and Stanford University dean. She holds a BA from Stanford, a JD from Harvard, an MFA in writing from California College of the Arts. She serves on the board of numerous organizations, well-known, Common Sense Media, the advisory board of the Foundation for College Education, Lean In, Project Success. She volunteers with No One Dies Alone. She is my favorite. And so I'm so excited to welcome her tonight. Julie, take it away.
Gilda, thank you so much for having me back to Glenbard. Oh, I wish I could be there with you in person. I will never forget the first time we met. I was on my book tour for How to Raise an Adult, which I had cobbled together by myself, largely because my publisher didn't necessarily want to put all those resources into a book tour for this book, because I was a first-time unknown author. So I went out on Facebook and cobbled together a book tour, met people along the way. Someone was like, "You've got to speak as part of the Glenbard Parents Series." So I called up Gilda, "Would you have me?" She said yes. And I showed up exhausted, very burned out, a little panicky because I was so dehydrated from my travels on the East Coast. And I had just given you a heads up, like, I'm just going to need a few hours to gather myself. And you said, "No problem, no worries, I've got you." And you put me up in your home and just nourished me and looked after me. You were so kind, literally a stranger, held me in every imaginable way. And then, of course, once I had had my couple hours of recovery, I got to meet your community. So enthusiastic, so engaged, so kind. It was just that whole book tour was a blur, but I remember Glenbard. So
Yay.
I'm delighted and honored to be back, particularly because this is the 25th year. I feel very, very fortunate and just and honored. I do, very much so. So thank you, Gilda. I want to thank you. I want to thank your whole team. I know that we've got Chris and Elmir doing the live stream and Jerica doing the Zoom. And I want to thank all the tech people, because Lord knows we would be nowhere without y'all this past year. I want to thank the students who are here and are going to ask me questions. We've got all of the Glenbard High Schools represented: Elizabeth from Glenbard North, Jemiah, Glenbard East, Ian, Glenbard South, and Glenbard West, not to be outdone, with two representatives, Louisa and Gavin. I also want to thank Anderson's in Naperville and all the locations for supporting this event. It's hard to be an author from 2,000 miles away. I'm in California, right? I wish I could be there in person. We could feel this book together and you could walk out of the auditorium and I could sign a book for you. That's not possible now because of the pandemic, but thanks to Anderson, you can still get this thing if you decide it merits your attention. Comes out 3 weeks from today. Anderson's, I'm grateful to you for your partnership around this particular event and all of Gilda's stuff. So I actually want to start with a story that takes place in Naperville, okay? My publisher loved how well How to Raise an Adult did. It became a New York Times bestseller, thanks in no small part to Gilda and her galvanizing, I'm sure. And so my publisher said, "Hey, write a sequel to this book for young adults who are struggling with adulting. If this book is on the harm of overparenting, is about what parents need to change in order to better support their kids, maybe we can write a book for the kids, for the young adults." And I said yes, and I signed a contract, but then I couldn't figure out how to write it. I thought, who the heck am I to write a book on adulting? I'm not an authority on adulting. Who is an authority on adulting? I mean, either we all are or nobody is, right? Because adulting is just a stage of life between childhood and death. Okay. You're cared for by others in childhood. You're cared for by others typically at the end of your life. But adulting, barring significant disabilities, is a period of decades, hopefully, when you're healthy and able to fend for yourself. And so I thought, okay, I've signed a contract to write this book, but I don't know how. And I tried and failed and tried and failed, by which I mean I would write things and my publisher would reject them and say, "Nope, that's not it. That's not good enough. It doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound helpful. It's not right." And I really was stuck. And then one day I went to my mailbox and got a letter in the mail, a handwritten letter from a young woman named Christine out of Naperville. Christine had heard my TED Talk, which is based on How to Raise an Adult, and she wrote me a handwritten letter. She's a 20-year-old Chinese American who grew up in Naperville and is now at Washington University in St. Louis. She wrote me this letter saying, basically, "Julie, I think I'm a little underbaked as an adult. And, she had the academic accomplishment and she'd done all these things and she'd graduated and made her parents proud and made Naperville proud and gone off to WashU. But she was self-describing as, I'm a little underbaked. I didn't know how to make food. I didn't know how to buy food and store food and make sure it didn't all rot at once. I didn't know how to clean anything. I just felt out in my adult life, as a college student, which is a really sort of safe place to practice being an adult because typically there are a lot of other adults there to kind of hold your hand a little bit. She just said, I just felt underbaked. And she kept using that term, which I took to mean inadequate. It was her version of the millennial terminology of, I don't know how to adult. I don't want to adult. I'm scared to adult. All of which was making my publisher and me want to try to write a helpful book. So I read this letter and I'm getting excited. I'm like, I'm writing this next book for Christine. She had reached out to a stranger through the mail, and I just felt like I owe it to her to get it right. So hats off to you, Christine, wherever you are right now. You are the reason I found the voice for this book and ultimately wrote 459 pages. First, I had nothing to say. I couldn't figure out what to say, but then it was like I had all the things to say. So it's really thanks to Christine in Naperville that I finally found my way forward. So I love the fact that my first official keynote for this book is situated in Glenbard, and that the Naperville community is so here. It's just very meaningful to me. Okay, so this book, Your Turn, How to Be an Adult, is for those many, many, many millions of young adults who are saying what millennials have been saying, and maybe even some older Gen Zs are now saying it. I don't know how to adult. I don't want to adult. I'm scared to adult. It's for those who are feeling stuck, entering, or who feel they're not succeeding at this stage of life I call between childhood and death. They're somewhere in here in the early years and they're just not quite feeling it. And, this first book was about overparenting, the harm of overparenting, which can lead to kids not being prepared to adult. But this book is, regardless of whether you were overparented, you might still be feeling stuck at this thing called adulting. So whether you were overparented or not, this book, Your Turn, is me summoning the deanly voice. I was a dean at Stanford for many years, where my job was to give a darn about my students, and I did. It's me summoning that voice in these pages of just, I'm sitting, I'm having coffee with you, we're connecting, you're trusting that I might be compassionate and have some good advice. It's me being just a caring older adult who's farther down this journey of life, and I'm just shining a warm light back in the faces of all the younger folk behind me. A warm light, this book is saying, like, look, yeah, I just want to illuminate the journey for you, so it's a little less mysterious, a little less terrifying. And in this book, I do say, yeah, you're terrified. I get it. I remember I was a little terrified too. You're worried, you feel inadequate. I know. I get it. I got you. But the thing is, you have to. There isn't a choice. You don't want to be a child forever looked after by someone else, like always a dog on someone else's leash, always by their side. You don't want that. You want to be off leash. You want to be a freestanding human, and you gotta, because if anything, if for no other reason, we're going to need you to take care of us one day when we're over here and you're still here, right? This sort of intergenerational compact. So the book is, I know you're terrified, but you gotta, I'm here for you. You can. Let's go. I try to tell this book in 3 different ways. That is, the advice comes in 3 forms. 1, my personal stories. I'm a nonfiction writer. I'm a memoirist. Gilda referred to my second book, Real American. This is me being Black and biracial, growing up in white spaces, dealing with racism, microaggressions, a lot of struggle to love myself, frankly. I write about that in this book. So I now know how to be an author around telling stories about my own life. So I thought, let me put some memoir in Your Turn. Let me tell some of my stories about my errors and trials and tribulations and aha moments around adulting. So this book is part personal memoir, but it's labeled a self-help book. And that's because there are tons of lists in this book, lists from how to fend for yourself to what good character is, to how to succeed in the workplace, to self-care, to figuring your money out. I mean, all these different things. There are lists throughout this book. So memoir, lists, and then finally, my favorite part, frankly, are the stories of close to 36 other humans, an incredibly uniquely diverse set of humans who have been adulting, whether they're in their early 20s or mid 20s, later 20s, into their 30s. I've got some folks who are quite a bit older reflecting back on those early adulting years. And through the stories of these humans who come from all walks of life, I'm demonstrating there ain't one way to adult. There is not one path forward. There are myriad, innumerable ways, an immense set of options. And this is about figuring out, who are you? What do you want out of this life? How can you give yourself permission to be that person? That's what this book is at the core. And I've got all these different folks on these pages because I hope as a reader, you'll feel seen. You'll say, oh, I relate to this one. Oh, I'm just like this person. Oh, and even if this person that you relate to doesn't have a background in any way similar to yours, you might still feel seen. And then you're going to go, wait a minute, we're not all that different. And that's the subversive message of Your Turn. It's for everybody. And in order for it to be for everybody, this advice on adulting, I wanted to try to bring everybody into its pages. Now, I couldn't literally bring everybody, but this book includes people from every racial background and people who began life poor, working class, middle class, upper middle class, wealthy, and the highly educated and the hardly educated, and people across the gender spectrum, and people from every kind of sexual orientation background, and people who have mental health challenges, and people who are neurodivergent, and people who were adopted and who have adopted and who have been raised in foster care and maybe are fostering somebody now, people with pets, people who are vegans, people on different ends of the political spectrum. I've tried people from Illinois and Texas and California and Florida and Montana and etc. I've tried to be inclusive in writing this book. Wouldn't dream of writing a book for all humans without trying to really see all humans in my mind's eye as I wrote it. So I'm going to open here. I mean, I've already opened, but I'm going to continue with a story that comes early on in the book because I want you to know what I'm trying to do here and what the memoir piece sounds like. So this is in chapter 2, Tag Your It, the terror and joy of fending for yourself. Okay. This is a story of when I knew I was an adult. And if you are solidly adulting, I want you to ask yourself, as you listen to me tell my story, when did you know you were an adult? What is your, I knew I was an adult when moment? I think we need to do a better job of sharing these moments with our kids so they realize we weren't perfect and we're still not. So they realize the whole point here is to learn and grow. So they realize the strengths and capacities they have within them that they may not appreciate they yet have. When you tell your kids your stories, you help them grow. Okay, so here's mine. In the waning summer of 1994, I got one of those phone calls you don't ever forget. I graduated from law school at Harvard in early June, studied for the hardest test of my life, the California bar exam, for the next 7 weeks straight. And in August, with the exam behind me, my husband, Dan, and I packed the contents of our Cambridge apartment into dozens of boxes to be shipped to California, where I'd be starting up at a law firm in October. Packing was tedious. I mean, who enjoys packing? Even so, we felt giddy as we did it. The Boston area had never felt welcoming to us, and we couldn't wait to return to California. We'd met there, and as we were falling in love with each other, we were falling in love with California too. The Cambridge apartment was the first place we'd lived in as a married couple, a concept that didn't hold a lot of meaning for us because we'd lived together for a few years before the wedding. But it was something the older generation said in those days. You're married now, as if the marriage ceremony had changed things between us. In our eyes, all that had changed was that people were forced to treat us as a unit, as inseparable, which as a Black and white pair in the early 1990s was something we did not take for granted. It meant I could say, "Excuse me, he's my effing husband." And Dan could say in his more mild-mannered way, "Yes, please, it'll be the two of us. This is my wife." It also meant my mom would finally have to allow us to sleep in the same bedroom when we visited my parents' house. This really cheesed me. She'd had sex before marriage, and I had the sibling to prove it. Then in August of 1994, Dan and I waved goodbye to the driver of the enormous Beacons moving van, spent one last night living out of a suitcase in the bare apartment, and boarded a tiny plane from Boston to the island off Cape Cod called Martha's Vineyard, where my parents had just decided to retire. They'd been living busy lives in New York when, in 1990, my then 72-year-old dad got a diagnosis of metastatic prostate cancer, which meant it was terminal. He was well for another couple of years, but by 1994, his commute to and from the big city every day was starting to wear him out. Not knowing how much time he had left, he and my mom decided to leave the important jobs and hectic schedule behind. They sold their place in New York and bought a modest house in the woods on the northern end of Martha's Vineyard near Lake Tashmoo. Tucked into a grove of trees off a dirt road, they planted flowers and vegetables, fed the birds, and spent their evenings in their recliners with daddy watching whatever team was playing and mom doing the crossword. I'm paying attention to this lesson of theirs. When your partner is terminally ill, drop everything and be together. Though I hope to God I never need to do it. This grotto of sorts was where Dan and I hid out while our huge moving truck made its slow roll across the country. In the daytime, we'd go out on errands with my folks and mooch around Oak Bluffs, Chilmark, and the island's other quaint towns. Each day ended with one of my mom's wonderful home-cooked meals and some television together. Then we'd turn in. Those days weren't just quality time with my parents. They forced me to confront the reality that Daddy was dying. Holed up in my parents' guest room, Dan and I folded our bodies into each other as quietly as possible, and then sleep inevitably came. One night we dreamed out loud about living a slower paced life on this island. Dan could easily be a handyman. He understands how things work, likes to be helpful, and loves to make things. Being more of a people person, maybe I would work selling fried clams near the beach or t-shirts. Then we started really fantasizing. Maybe we could open a little inn to serve the tourists who make this their summertime mecca and relax into a much slower paced life during the other 8 months of the year. But we'd always end these conversations with a wistful sigh. We were 25, Dan, and 26, me, and I'd just graduated from a powerhouse law school. Slower paced didn't seem the right speed for our age and stage of life. Looking back, I will say that to be moving away from the Boston area just as my folks had landed there was rather unfortunate timing. We were the proverbial ships passing in the night. But law school back east had been just a detour. The life Dan and I envisioned for ourselves had started in California and was destined to continue in California. We were 20-somethings headed out into the wide open landscape of the rest of our lives. What was going on with Daddy's health didn't have to change the course of our lives, right? If you think you detect a twinge of regret in my rememberings, you may be correct. Nowadays, parents and their grown children are more likely to have close relationships, to be intimates who stay in constant touch. But back when I was coming up, it was common for young people to move away from home. In fact, both of my parents and all of my siblings had done so. Besides, my parents had moved me 7 times during my childhood. Then they moved again while I was in college, and they moved yet again to Martha's Vineyard as I graduated law school. Maybe I was looking to plant roots for once in my life in California and didn't want to be part of an itinerant lifestyle any longer. With a few nights to go before flying out to California and dinner about to be on the table, I decided to check our voicemail. There was a message from the moving company asking us to call. So I did. I gave my name to the operator, and as she transferred me to someone else, I pondered the clunky, new, hyphenated last name that Dan Haims and I had invented for ourselves, Lythcott Haims, which still felt like a pile of rocks in my mouth. 2 years into married life, I still felt like I was mostly just playing the part of the grown-up married woman. I swallowed hard and hung up the phone, turned around to face Dan and my parents. Beacons called, I announced to the dining room. A fire started in our truck somewhere near the border of Texas and Oklahoma. It's bad. We won't know how bad until it gets to some warehouse in a town called San Leandro near Oakland, where they'll unload all of our stuff. We have to call this number again in a few days to find out when to go there. My voice trailed off as I pictured our belongings all burned up. Then I tightened my lips and raised my eyebrows in a look of, well, that's the way it is. I wanted so badly to act like this was not scary as I wanted to be brave. Dan came over to me with the same look on his face, and we hugged really tight, but briefly. My parents came over and hugged us too. Then we sat down, and my mother began serving dinner. The news was bad. My law firm had insured the move, so we'd likely be able to replace our clothes, furniture, and appliances. We were middle class and upper middle class people with parents who could provide a safety net if disaster happened. So this is not a story of tragedy or suffering, but we still felt like newlyweds. And all the irreplaceable stuff, like the love letters we'd written to each other whenever we'd been apart, were in that truck. Getting the news about the fire in our moving van turns out to have been my first adulting moment. I mean, the wedding wasn't it. That was just a big party where I wore a poofy dress. The bar exam wasn't it. That was just another standardized test. Even the job at the law firm would still be somehow playing the part of the grown-up. But this unexpected snafu where I knew I had to fend for myself turned out to be the moment I unambiguously knew I was an adult. What I mean is, well, yes, my parents felt for us, and in the moments following the phone call, they expressed compassion and reassurance. Nothing in their eyes said that this was on them to handle. Nothing in me felt that way either. I mean, sure, I would have loved for someone to step up and handle it. And yet, you know what? That's not true. The four of us knew that this was mine and Dan's to handle, and I knew we could do it or that we would do our damnedest to try. We weren't kids anymore, and we didn't want to be treated as kids. It actually felt good knowing, yep, this is some shit, and this is our shit. Your I know I'm an adult fending for yourself moment is coming if it hasn't happened already. And it will be scary, and you will want to be a child who gets to turn away and be held in someone's arms as somebody else takes over. But you won't. As my friend Janet likes to say, you'll say to yourself, crap, where are the adults? And then you'll realize, it's me. And you'll step up to face it, which will turn out to feel terrifying on the way to feeling very empowering. And once it is all behind you, you, like me, will turn out to be fine. Better than fine, actually, because whatever you've just survived will make you stronger. So that's a story in your turn. Thank you for giving me the chance to read it, hear it out loud. I want you to ask yourself, as I said before I read it, what is your adulting aha moment? I want you to think about that. I want you to think about the stories you might be telling your kids in order to help them learn and grow on their way to their adulthood. So let's come back from these I knew I was an adult when stories to the present. You're raising kids. My own kids, by the way, are now 21 and 19, not quite launched. All that I've learned about overparenting, all my overparenting tendencies have led to a bit of less than completely launching in at least one of my offspring. Okay, I'm owning that, trying to repattern some of the patterns. Not to say it's all my fault, but some of it is my fault. That's why I wrote that first book, How to Raise an Adult. I'm trying to help other people not make the same mistakes. So let's just remind ourselves, what are we often doing in parenting today that may be a little less than helpful when it comes to having offspring who will turn out to launch and fledge the nest in a healthy, sound, secure way when the time comes? As I identify it, it's overparenting, which we call helicopter parenting and other funny names, but it really breaks down to three behaviors: overprotection, overdirection, and excessive hand-holding. A parent can be doing one of these things, two of these types, or all three. I tend to be, frankly, all three. Okay. All of these manners of parenting help in the short term. When we're overprotective, we always know where our kids are. We're always on the lookout. When we're fiercely directive of their path, we lay a path for them and they better march down it, because we tend to condition our love for them on how well they execute their plans, our plans for their life. And when we hold their hands too long, well, they're held, they're taken care of, they're handled. Nothing gets forgotten. Forgotten things get brought, right? We seem to help in the short term when we overparent. But overparenting undermines children and it undermines young adults. And that's why I wrote this book. When we're overprotective, often because of our fears, the just in case, you never know, I have to follow along behind you, I have to always know where you are, I have to go on field trips with your school even though I'm not a chaperone because I'm just worried. When we're overprotective like that, we can raise children who are themselves afraid and anxious, who are themselves unprepared to conduct themselves out in the world when we aren't watching, to develop those good instincts, to practice using that good judgment. They haven't had to because we've always been there to say, oh, nope, don't forget, right? We've always been on the lookout, which means they haven't had to be on the lookout for themselves. When we're fiercely directive, you need to be a doctor, you need to be a lawyer, you need to be an engineer, you need to be a tennis star, whatever our plan is that makes us feel good and important. Our kids don't end up having the chance to learn, who am I? Why am I here on this planet? What do I actually want out of this one precious life of mine? We deprive them of knowing, really knowing, meaning listening to that internal voice that says, this is who you are. This is what you're good at. This is the work you want to be doing. This is your identity. These are the relationships you want to have. When we're fiercely directive, we're basically in the driver's seat of our kid's life, and they're just kind of along for the ride. And that harms them. And when we hold their hands too long, well, they never end up having to deal with remembering their stuff, being held accountable when something did get forgotten or mishandled. Like, we're just there, kind of the concierge cleanup parent. Again, it looks like it helps, but in the long term, we have deprived them of having the experiences that would teach them, build their executive function, and also teach them how to cope and deal and ultimately keep going when things go badly. And that's longhand for resilience. So we end up, when we overparent, undermining our kids' agency and resilience and their character. And we don't want to be doing these things. We don't want to be doing these things. That's why I wrote How to Raise an Adult. So how do we help our kids instead of overparenting? What can we do to prepare our kids for this healthy adulthood? There's a wonderful addiction treatment center in Los Angeles that I visited and interviewed multiple people at for my first book, How to Raise an Adult. And they're working with so many young adults, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, relatively young people who are addicted. And they've really tied those addiction behaviors back to a parenting style where the kid was basically constantly held. Now we hold them when they're, newborns and 1 and 2 and 3, and, we hold them, but at some point we put them down, right? But metaphorically, what Beit Teshuvah was noticing as they were working with parents of young addicts was they called their parent support group Parents Without Borders, as in, it's a play on Doctors Without Borders, got doctors who go and treat people around the world. Parents Without Borders was their way of saying the parents don't have borders or boundaries with their kids. It's like they're still carrying them, even though they're 17, even though they're 21. The parent still feels, I've got to handle it. I've got to manage it. I'm responsible. I'll fix it, right? I'll choose. And in this parent support group at the Addiction Treatment Center, helping young adults, they were trying to teach the parents, you got to put your kid down, not put them down like diss them, simply move from this style of relationship to one where your child is a freestanding person and you're near them, next to them, but you're not holding on to them any longer. And I think that's a beautiful image. Try to keep in mind when we think about what are we trying to do? We want to be able to set our kids down and wave as they walk away off into their amazing young adulthood, into their 20s. And we hope they will come home a lot and we will cook for them and we will have family gatherings and we will talk as often as we want. But we just need to know biologically, my kids got it. They can walk the pathway of life and I'll be gone one day and they'll be okay. I mean, that's what good parenting ultimately is measured by. Did we raise them so that they could fend for themselves? All right. So how do we do this? Well, I've come up with a little graphic that is very old school in that it is hand drawn. I don't use slides, as you may know, and as you can tell, but nevertheless, I've decided an image would be helpful. Okay. So I call the skills that we need to instill so that we raise people who are healthy, well-functioning adults. I call it the arc of becoming an adult. Okay. Take a look at that. The arc of becoming an adult, right? So you see the arc here is A stands for agency, R stands for resilience, C stands for character. And they go from being adorable little babies to freestanding young adults who wave goodbye. Okay. Not goodbye forever, but just like goodbye, like I've got this. I'm good. I'll talk to y'all later. Okay. The arc of becoming an adult. You with me? All right. So what is agency? Well, agency is the sense of I can do the task in front of me. I can do for myself. I can think for myself. I can solve this problem. Not the biggest problems in the world. Not like I can cure cancer, but like I can enroll in this class. I can apply for this job. I can send this email. I can make this phone call. I can. Okay. I can seek help. That's also part of agency. Okay. It's that deep knowing of our own existence. I can do stuff. Okay. A human needs that. Okay. That leads to them developing skills and, getting work and being able to feed themselves, all of these things, right? I can do stuff. The R in the arc of becoming is resilience. What is resilience? Well, it's I can cope when things didn't go my way, right? The disappointments, the setbacks, the physical injuries and pains, the embarrassing things we do, the things we're ashamed of. Like resilience is developed by having had the challenging experience and having been allowed to sit with the pain, disdain, shame, embarrassment, regret, sadness, anger of it, and have those feelings and say to oneself, well, okay, did I learn anything? Was there anything I could learn from this? Can I do it differently? Maybe it just happened to you and there's nothing you could do differently. So then it's just, a lot is out of my control in life. Is there anything to learn? Let me learn those lessons. Let me learn that. Let me think it through. That way my brain knows for next time, because there will be a next time. I can handle it. I can cope. We get more and more resilient as we encounter the setbacks and the difficulties. Okay. And then the C of the ARC, do you remember what it was? Character. Character. What is character? Well, you kind of know it when you see it. Someone with good character you admire, someone with bad character you don't really want to be around. Character is, I think, the understanding that there are more people in this world than you. There are more than 7 billion of us on the planet. None of us is any more or less important than any other. And good character is knowing, you know what? It's not just about me. I got to behave in the world in ways that take other people into account. Okay. So agency, we want to be building agency in our kids, resilience and character. If we do, you get successful, happy, healthy kids who can fend and be adults one day. So I want to turn now to specific examples of things we might be doing that are undermining agency, resilience, and character, and what we can do instead to foster agency, resilience, and character. So, for example, where we parents often, I'll raise my hand here, really afraid of our kids' feelings. We don't want our kids to be sad. We don't want our kids to be afraid. And for many of us, myself included, this means sanitizing the nursery rhymes. What do you call them? The stories, children's stories, nursery rhymes, don't we call them that? The stories of yore, the witches and the goblins and the ogres and the Hansel and Gretel and the dragons. Many of us want a more sanitized version of those scary stories because we don't want our 3-year-old to be frightened. Okay. Turns out that when we create some stories that show like, oh, there's some, there's bad stuff out in the world, there's bad stuff, it creates a boundary and the kid feels like I'm safe right here. There are places of safety. There are bad things and I got to make sure I don't, I'm not like Hansel and Gretel and end up in a witch's house. Kids need to learn that lesson. Okay. These are decades and centuries old stories that some of us are too afraid to share with our children because we're afraid it'll frighten them. The reverse happens. They don't end up with the strength of that, like, I'm safe here in my house and there are bad things out there, but I can learn to conduct myself in ways that keep me safe. Oftentimes we're not comfortable with our kids' feelings. Like, if they're upset, we just, if they're going to be upset by something, we want to make sure the thing doesn't happen. We seem to be so uncomfortable with the discomfort our kids may experience. We're supposed to let them have we're supposed to prevent them from severe harm, but outside of the truly severe harm, threats to life and safety, we're supposed to actually nod and smile and say, yeah, that was scary, but it's okay that they experience that. They need to have that feeling and process it and discover that life goes on. As Brene Brown teaches, we want to take away our kids' pain or prevent them from ever feeling it. But the more loving thing to do is sit with them as they experience it, the sadness, the fear, the anger, whatever it is, and just validate it and say, yeah, you're sad. I see that. Do you want to tell me more? Let me better understand you. I don't want to presume I get it. I'm not you, right? It's empathizing around what they have experienced. And then articulating some optimism. Like, I know it's hard now, but I know one day these kinds of things won't be so hard for you. So you're empathizing and then creating the sense that you believe that they will be able to grow through it. This gets really acute around our kids' fears. Too often in today's America, in our milieu, we are curating the environment for our child. We are preparing the road for the child instead of preparing the child for all the various roads. And when our child is afraid of things like, I'm afraid of the dark, I'm afraid to be alone, or our child is very, very picky with their food. I'm not talking about an allergy here, but just a preference. Too many of us, and I'll raise my hand here, have decided, okay, I will make sure my kid always has the food they like. For me and my family, it was pasta with butter and Parmesan cheese. And I was that parent who, when my son was 7 and we were going over to another set of people's house, friend's house for a barbecue, and they're like, oh, we're going to make sausages on the grill. I was like, my kid's not going to eat the sausages. So I made a little baggie of pasta with butter and Parmesan cheese. I'm so embarrassed because I've learned since that, boy, that's not in the long term helping your son. But at the time, I was just doing what I thought was loving. Okay. Turns out when we behave that way, we're saying to our kid, that need you have or that fear you had is so valid and important that I will fix the environment around you so you never have to suffer from it or suffer through it. And that can turn into full-blown anxiety one day. Research out of Yale in the last year has reported on this. Similarly, if our child can't be in the dark, so we're like, don't worry, you'll never be in the dark. Or our child can't be alone, don't worry, you'll never be alone. And we curate the whole family dynamic around, well, this one can never be by themselves and this one can never be in the dark. It feels loving, but it's telling them that fear you have of what it might be like to be in the dark is so valid. I'm going to make sure it never happens, because a disaster would happen if you were alone or in the dark. Instead, as with more benign feelings, we're supposed to be empathetic. I know you're afraid. I understand that you're afraid. Tell me more. Let's talk about it. I am here. And then, of course, if the kid doesn't want to be alone, at some point you want to say, you know what, I'm going to be in the next room. And I know this is going to be hard for you, but I am there. I am not far. And I have confidence that in time, you're going to grow through this. You're expressing that optimism in their capacity to grow. Okay, some more examples. When kids fumble in life, we often want to rescue. So we want to bring them the backpack they left at home, or go retrieve the backpack they left at school. They slept through the alarm, so we're going to miss our first meeting and drive them to school. There are all kinds of ways. They didn't bring their sporting equipment to school, so they won't be able to practice, or maybe won't even be able to play in this weekend's game because they're not able to suit up. And we drop everything and go and handle it and smooth the situation. And it feels loving, this rescuing, but it ends up teaching them only my parent will always rescue me. That's what their brain has learned. My parent will always rescue me. It also teaches them more subtly, my parent doesn't think I can handle stuff and always needs to rescue me. And that can really catch up with them by their teenage years. Instead, again, we're supposed to empathize and then back away. The language here is, oh, I'm so sorry that happened. That must be so frustrating. Are you all right? Empathy, 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 and then pause, smile in your voice, say, how do you think you're going to handle it, honey? And that tells them you think it is a problem and it's not your problem and you think they can. And again, evincing that you think they can is a very important thing, missing in many respects in childhood today. The more we can reiterate to our kids that we think they're capable, the more capable they will actually be. When it comes to communication, too often we parents are intervening when kids aren't getting along. We've created the play date, a relatively new concept, not new to any of you, but new in that it was created in the mid 1980s. Kids used to just find kids to play with before that and arrange play without being under the watchful eye of parents, as if we always assume something's going to go wrong or somebody's going to be mean. Kids have to learn how to work out, how to be with other humans. They learn things like don't be a hog of the ball when they're playing a game of, pick up whatever with other kids. If you hog the ball all the time, the other kids are going to just say, I'm not playing with you anymore. I'm going home. Okay. Now we've got adults managing childhood play constantly, so they don't have to sort out amongst themselves. They don't develop the good characteristics about sharing and about compromise and taking turns and being kind to others. It just sort of, we swoop in and, if the kids are disagreeing, the adults often these days will handle it or talk it through or tell them what to say. And they emerge from this childhood not knowing how to handle run-of-the-mill difficulties with other humans. Again, what we're supposed to do falls into the same pattern as the other bits of advice. Empathize. How are you feeling? Let's talk about what happened. What is that making you feel? How did it all come about? Talk it through. You can actually offer some valuable insight about what the other person might have intended or might have had going on or might be thinking or might be needing. And you can offer that by way of advice without fixing it by being the one to sort of sort it out and announce to the kids that it's all been solved. Oftentimes when it comes to housework or scut work or whatever we might call the stuff of life, we feel, oh, I don't want my kid to have to do any of that. They're so busy with their schoolwork and their home and their activities. we think we're somehow helping them by not asking them to pitch in around the house. Wrong. Okay. Turns out chores are the greatest predictor. If you did chores as a kid or had a part-time job in high school, that's the greatest predictor of your being professionally successful in life. What? Why? Because chores teach you a work ethic, teach you to roll up your sleeves and pitch in and be useful. So what we're supposed to be doing is signaling to our kids from very young, I mean, very young, the minute they can walk, we can be saying, we nod with our heads and smile and move our bodies and we go, we're going to do the laundry now. And you just do that and walk in the direction of the laundry. Your little ones will follow you. The older they are, they'll be like, why is mom or dad nodding at us all of a sudden? But the earlier you ingrain it, the quicker they get the sense that I belong to this family. I have what Micheline Duclef calls the family membership card. She wrote about the importance of chores and helping out around the house in this new book, Hunt, Gather, Parent, which I highly, highly recommend. I think it's a solution to much of what ails us. And they discover, they learn the skills of making food and cleaning up and looking after younger siblings and taking care of business in all the ways. And it's not punishing them, it's inviting them to be a full-fledged member of a family, and they'll be more prepared to fend for themselves when they go out to that first apartment. And then there's relationships and love. If life is a train track and you are the train, or if life is a terrain, you're navigating by train, what keeps you going, these two rails, in terms of like the basic things you got to have going, work, you got to have a way to support yourself somehow, and relationships. If you only have a job, no matter how amazing the job is, you will go careening off into the darkness if this other rail is not, in place. Our human relationships, as it turns out, according to fantastic research, and here I'll cite the book Friendship, which talks about how human friendships, good reciprocal human relationships, are the predictor of our longevity. The people who lived to be over 80, it was the quality of their friendships at 50 that determined whether they would, or that predicted that they would live a long life, not their cholesterol scores at 50, their relationships. Okay. So we got to help our kids be in relationship. Okay. Here's how we're undermining it. When we overparent, particularly when we drop everything to handle everything for them, it's like my kid texted me, they left their backpack up. I better just drop everything I might have going on and go fix that. Okay. When we just focus constantly on how did you do in school today? Have you started your homework? What happened on the science test? When we get out the glue gun and start doing their science project for them, we're sort of saying like, your life is my project. You are my project. I am attending to you like you're a fragile little orchid in a greenhouse, or, some other metaphor, like you are mine to handle, and that undermines their agency, but it also makes them feel, some of them, like little tiny narcissists, like I'm the center of the universe. My parents drop everything to serve me. My needs matter most. And here's what happens. According to Lori Gottlieb, psychologist in Los Angeles, who wrote the amazing book, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, New York Times bestseller, she sees 20-somethings in her therapy practice who say things like, well, I had this great boyfriend and everything was great, but then, we had a fight and he wasn't 100% there for me, so I dropped him. And she's like, you what? You just dropped, amazing relation. And she came to appreciate, after hearing numerous young adults tell her this kind of stuff, too many of them have been raised with parents who dropped everything. It's like the parents' needs didn't matter. We will drop everything and handle the kid. Okay. They grow up and then they're in relationship, and now they've got this person who maybe loves them, they think, and right. And when they disagree and this person doesn't just say, oh, what do you need? Let me handle your needs. Let me drop everything that I might need and just show up for you. To our kid, to our now adult kid, it doesn't look like love, because we've taught them love is the other person doesn't have any needs and just attends to yours. So we need to be teaching our kids that love is being there for each other and also taking care of ourselves. Turning the page on my notes. All right. So let me tell you now a little bit more about this book. as I've said, each chapter is part stories, part from my life, part self-help tips, practical tips, and part profiles of this uniquely diverse set of humans who allowed me into their lives. One of the earliest chapters that I actually read you the moving story from is called Tag You're It, The Terror and Joy of Fending for Themselves and offending for yourself. This book is written for the young adult who who might not have had the greatest preparation in childhood, which may be why they're stuck. It may be written for people who were overparented. It was sorry, it was written for all young adults, whether they were overparented or not. I can't know whether my readers were overparented, but I'm really interested in why do they feel stuck. If they feel like they're not adulting, can't adult, don't want to adult, terrified of adulting, they're stuck somehow. And this book is addressing that stuckness. So to that chapter 2, the Tag You're It, The Terror and Joy of Fending for Yourself. The 3 stories there are Kyle, who grew up in Appalachia with a mother who was addicted to opioids, and he had to look after himself, his mother, and his little sister as an adolescent. And that kid developed a work ethic that will make you gasp. It's a beautiful depiction of what work ethic sounds like, which is not to say you have to have somebody significantly ill in your family to achieve one. But I think the bigger question is, why do we wait for the bad thing to happen in life before we appreciate what really matters, or we focus on developing the skills we're going to need to have? This book is, I think, trying to prepare you to have the skills so that when the bad thing does happen, you're already equipped. The second story is from Levi, a guy in Sacramento who was told he had to be up and out at 18. And you see him in his apartment the first night he's there, paying for his own apartment in community college. He's staring up at the ceiling, just feeling this deep satisfaction, like this is my place. I'm paying these bills, and boy, does that feel good. And you see Zuri, a young actor who's now starring in Good Trouble on Freeform. But when I interviewed her, she was just beginning to make her way as an actor in LA, working 2 jobs and on some governmental assistance to make ends meet, auditioning, really tightly curtailing her expenses. And a friend goes out to lunch with her and orders all of this expensive food. And you see Zuri there trying to stand up for herself. Part of fending is standing up for yourself when the people around you are trying to encroach upon your agency, are trying to have it be their way instead of, have it be fair. The next chapter is called You're Not Perfect. You're here to learn and grow. And here I'm deliberately subverting childhood norms where we said to our kids constantly, perfect, great job, you're amazing. This chapter is about no. Perfectionism is one of those dragons of childhood we have to slay. Perfectionism is a terrible and terrifying thing. It eats us up. We have to embrace that we're here to learn and grow. It is not about being perfect. Perfection isn't even really possible, except with, here and there you might do something perfectly, but a life where you expect to always be perfect is no life at all. And here I tell the story of a young woman named Ananda, originally from Montana, who then grew up mostly in North Carolina. And she went away on a gap year with Global Citizen Year and had her bag stolen when she had hiked 8 miles to a beach, and had to figure out how to convince some locals that she came across to help her. She was in Senegal. She was speaking Wolof, which is a language spoken in Senegal. And she was terrified to tell the Global Citizen Year advisor who was looking out for her that she'd even gone on this unauthorized beach trip. She wasn't supposed to go, and now she had her wallet stolen, and she had to sort of fend for herself to get back. And in recovering from this, she felt ashamed. She felt very just badly that she had made this bad decision and might be kicked out of the program. And they said, we're not going to kick you out of the program, but we do hope you'll sit with yourself and learn from this and figure out what you might do differently next time. And she came away from that appreciating she had been a perfectionist all her life, but now her entire purpose is about how can I continue to learn and grow. And that story is a beautiful illustration of somebody who ultimately does have agency and resilience and character. Another chapter that's a favorite is called Stop Pleasing Others. They have no idea who you are. And this is the chapter on figuring out the work you want to do, figuring out your identities that matter most to you and giving yourself permission to be that person. Another is Start Talking to Strangers. Humans are key to your survival. This is another subversion of the childhood norm. Don't talk to strangers, which isn't useful because you leave home and your entire life is full of strangers. So the skill is actually figure out how to talk to strangers, right? Keep yourself safe, develop good instincts, but also make your way forward in life, getting to know humans, because those strangers will become acquaintances, who become neighbors, who become colleagues, who become friends, who become lovers, who become fam. So it's essential that our kids learn how to talk to other humans. And there's a chapter called Get Out of Neutral, the tragedy of unused potions. This is sort of the middle of the book where I'm really addressing what's got you stuck. Why are you stuck? Is it that you're trying to keep all your options open? Who for? What is that about? Often people who tell their kids, keep your options open, don't do that, are trying to say, I don't like that you're about to do. Keep your options open. The central message of this book probably is to be an adult is to make that decision, to make that choice that you sense is right for you, even if the folks who love you most are like, I don't think you should do that, because it's your life. It's not their life or their life. It's yours. So in a Getting Unstuck chapter, the Get Out of Neutral chapter, I have Michael, who's at a tier 2 college or tier 3 college, who's hustling to get jobs only available to the tier 1 people, so to speak. He, through hustling, demonstrates that that is just a fallacy, that everybody is capable of succeeding in these elite environments. And he's going to prove the naysayers wrong by just being tenacious and working hard. And Jim, who's miserable in an elite graduate school, but ultimately faces the music, including his Korean mother, and says, I'm not going to do this anymore. It's not what I want. And he gets out of that. Stefania, who's a biracial woman in an unequal marriage, and just after years and years and years of being unhappy in marriage and therapy, she gets unstuck from that. And Ben, who's 30 years old and who's still living in his parents' house, and they won't let him move out. They say, you can't, it's too expensive, you shouldn't. And there's a lot of control happening there, but Ben got his own checking account and finally was in charge of his own money, which is a beautiful example of him clawing his way out of a stuck situation and grabbing some agency for himself. In the book, we have Akshay, who came out to his parents. He's Indian, Hindu, male, gay, queer, comes out in college. Parents can't deal. He's estranged from them for 10 years. And then finally they come back together. He's by then a successful doctor in Chicago. We have Joe, a white dude from Dallas, who's a theater lover, whose father is a corporate guy and can't accept Joe for who Joe is and what Joe wants to do with his life. And ultimately Joe breaks up with his father and they are estranged. We have Ashley, who couldn't make a roommate relationship stick. She kept leaving whenever they disagreed, and she finally learned how to talk to humans. Chapter 9 deals with the things we contend with, what I call the situations, our diagnoses, our challenges, our differences. And those stories center around anxiety, depression, eating disorders, obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar disorder. Then we get to chapter 10, which is when the you-know-what hits the fan. And these stories are around incarceration, cancer, alcoholism, and systemic racism. Ultimately, in listening to reading other people's stories, this is how we learn to do. This is how young people learn. The oral tradition, telling stories from generation to generation to generation, is as old as humans. Since we've been able to talk to one another, we've been telling each other our stories. So that's what this book aims to do, to help young people learn to do and to cope and to survive. So one of the best things you can do, as I've said, is tell your children your own stories about fending, about figuring things out, about stuff that didn't go right, about failure, and about when you knew you were an adult. The ultimate message of this book is you can, you must, you will, you potentially already are adulting. Keep going. So I'm going to read one final paragraph here and then I'll take your questions. This is the very end of the book. This is a story about Sean, who lives in Australia, a guy who at 21 welcomed a baby somewhat unexpectedly into his life. He and his partner, Jess, found out they were pregnant, and their baby Oscar was born when he was 21. Having baby Oscar was Sean's tag you're it moment, but it doesn't have to be a baby. It can be anything. It can be something as existentially big as heeding the barbaric yawp from within you that urges you to choose an option others don't understand. It can be as practical as handling things when your moving van catches fire. Listen to Sean retell this stage of his life. Hear the various pieces of uncertainty combusting in his brain, which then forged themselves into a decision, a commitment, a willingness to go for it and learn from it, whatever it may turn out to be. To be. It's not just the question, it's the whole damn point. That's how the book ends. Thank you for listening. And now I'm excited to hear whatever questions are on your mind.
Julie, thank you, Julie. I remember a conversation that we had when your first book just came out, and we talked about this difficult power struggle within us, the mother lion who wants to protect. And then we know, and I will always remember and thank you when you said, when we do for them, we deny them the satisfaction of any success that they have. And that has stuck with me. And your honesty about the challenge, that's really what it is. It's just this internal struggle. And of course, I love prepare the child for the road, not the road for the child. If we take away those thoughts among so many. All right, well, we're going to hear from the kids. So, Elizabeth, you are up first.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Slobodecki, and I'm a senior at Glenbard North. I'm very anxious about making mistakes that may jeopardize my future, and sometimes this anxiety prevents me from being able to make a decision because I cannot be sure about the result, and then I don't do anything. So I was wondering how I can be better at making decisions and choosing to try something new.
Elizabeth, thanks for sharing that. And anxiety is something so many of us contend with these days, people your age, people older than you, people even as old as me. And the first step, I think, is recognizing it. So the fact that you can say, I am anxious or I have anxiety is definitely step one. I hope you're getting some therapy and guidance around that because that's really important too. There's a wonderful podcast that's out this week. The Rich Roll podcast has an expert on anxiety on it. And I want to like put it in the chat, or I'll send it to Gilda and she can pass it on to you and maybe in her newsletter, this expert is talking about how just drawing awareness to the things that make us anxious can be an interruption of the anxiety loop that's running constantly in our heads. And so I urge you in the direction of this, and I'm sure you've developed various techniques for dealing. The message that I would offer you is, I want you to hear me real clear on this. I'm 53. None of us is perfect. There is no one path in life that's correct or right. There isn't, unlike kind of taking math classes throughout high school where you learn this. So, and the only way you get to this class is having mastered this one. And the only way you get to this one is by having mastered this one. Like life isn't like a math curriculum where you've got to know this to get to this, to get to this, to get to this. If life was that way and we missed this skill, then how are we ever going to get here? Okay. Life isn't that way. Okay. How you treat others is probably going to be the greatest determinant of how ultimately successful and happy you are. So even when you're worried and stressed out about outcomes, about classes you're taking or what to do next, you can take a deep breath and say, you know what, I'm going to go focus on my kindness practice. I'm going to go seek out people that I can deliberately practice an act of kindness on, because being kind to somebody is going to help restore your equilibrium, make you feel a little bit better in the moment. It's going to make their life better. And anyone who watched it is also going to be enhanced by it. I'm talking here about kindness. I'm talking about character. The way you behave with other humans is really going to be the biggest door opener for you in life. So when you can be grateful for what you do have acknowledge the things others have done or the bounty that's in your life, when you can be kind to your fellow human, and I mean all humans, strangers that you see who need help, teachers, parents, family, friends, whomever, you know, the more we can behave that way, the more doors of life just open to us. And I think you will see that even as imperfection happens, even as you mess something up or you didn't quite get that opportunity you wanted or what have you, you will develop evidence like, I can keep going. I'm just going to keep going. You know, that wasn't for me. All right. I thought I wanted it. It didn't happen. What's next? Keep on going is one of the central messages of this book. And being a loving person who can acknowledge that anxiety, acknowledge where it comes from, acknowledge that it's there, take that deep breath, work on our how to be with other humans, and have confidence that the more technical things like which school you end up going to, what you end up majoring, what job you have, like it'll fall into place. And the more you are curious about what am I good at, what do I love, and let me go in those directions, and let me try to crowd out the noise of what everyone else in my community or town or school or family thinks is important. Let me just, you know, be this person I'm getting more familiar with and honor what she says she wants. The happier life will be.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Elizabeth.
you.
Thanks,
Thank
Elizabeth.
you. Ian, you are up next.
Hi, my name is Ian Ruggiero, and I'm a senior at Glenbard South High School. How do you know if someone would be a good mentor? Do you ask someone to be your mentor?
Ian, you know someone's going to be a good mentor because of how you feel in their presence. As I say this, everybody listening can imagine when I say, who do you feel good around? Who do you feel like you can be yourself around? And a mentor is that person plus they have some kind of authority or age or stage in life where they're a little bit farther down the path of life from you, such that they could kind of help you sort out things they have perhaps already encountered in their life. But first and foremost, it's, do you feel that they are in your corner? They care about you. They are rooting for you. You can go to them and they're not going to judge you. Sometimes it's it's an aunt or an uncle or a coach or a teacher, a family friend who isn't so wrapped up in your entire existence like a parent, but you know, close enough that they're familiar with what matters to you and your activities and your hopes and fears. And ultimately, Ian, you feel safe with them. You feel, I can dare to tell this person what I think I want to do next, maybe, and they're not going to laugh at me. You know, they're going to have this mindset of, awesome, tell me more. Or, all right, you know, how can I help? Okay. Or let me give you some things to think about as you pursue that further. You know, it's somebody who's just like I say in the book, all the love of a parent in some ways, but none of the responsibility. You know, they just get to be kind and caring and thoughtful and offer good advice. And you can find mentors in your schooling environment, in your athletic teams, in your religious community, if you have one, in your family, and in the workplace. And specifically in the workplace, if you really admire how somebody does their job and you'd like to develop a mentoring relationship with them, what you want to do is show up early one day and arrive before they do. This is outside the pandemic when we can all just interact freely. And, you know, you say, hey, when you get a moment, could I just get 20 minutes with you? I'd just love to get more involved in the projects you're working on. I'd love to know how I can help. You're basically trying to show up, be useful, pitch in. Don't wait to be asked to help. Just show up eager like a dog wagging its tail. Like, how can I get involved in the cool stuff you've got going on? The more you work with them, the more they will start to take an interest in you and in your development in the workplace, whatever it may be. I got this advice actually from Sheryl Sandberg, who's the COO of Facebook. She had a great mentor back in the day when she was young, and she just, you know, did all she could to be indispensable, to be that right-hand person who was just always there thinking, you know, what might my mentor need next in the workplace environment? You know, how can I be of use? How can I, you know, make their burden lighter by showing up and taking care of some of it? That's how great mentoring relationships develop in the workplace.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anna.
Jamia, you're next.
Hi, I'm Jemiah, and I'm a senior at Glenbard East High School. I know this question might sound a bit broad, but throughout my life, I've been told by a whole bunch of adults whenever it comes to talking about issues that I have in my life or anything like that, whether how small or large it is, that, oh, you're not grown, you don't understand what it's like to be an adult, you're not adulting yet, you're not there. And I know that I am not an adult yet now, but if you could give a definition of what it does mean to be an adult, what would it be?
Yeah. Well, Jemiah, I'm sorry they've said that to you. That doesn't feel very good when people say that. Um, to me, adulting is, it's on you to take care of business. That yes, you can seek advice and guidance from others. You might find that others are involved in some way in whatever it is you're trying to do, but ultimately the responsibility lies with you. Ultimately, that bill needs to be paid by you. Ultimately, that choice needs to be made by you. Ultimately, that job needs to be applied for by you. That medication needs to be refilled by you. It's, I'm taking care of business, and these other folks might have stuff going on in their lives, and I'm still okay. I've got this. It's that I've got this. Not to say it's all going to be perfect. It's not. You will screw up. You will forget. You will deliberately do things that you shouldn't. You will accidentally do things. Bad things will just happen. Like, being an adult isn't about everything going smoothly. Being an adult is knowing I've got this. No matter what, I'm going to be fine. I'll figure this out.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Gavin, you are up next.
Hi, my name is Gavin, and I'm a senior at Glenbard West. And I've been raised to believe that there is no direct path to adulthood. And yet in my family, there are certain stops and steps that I'm expected to meet, like getting a summer job, finishing high school, going to college, working in the summer, and then getting a job after college. And I don't know if this will exactly be my path, and I want to make my own decisions. I also know that I need help with my decisions. On my way to adulthood, is there a time when I should no longer rely on or need advice from others?
No, there isn't a time you should no longer rely on or need advice. But let's talk about what we mean by rely on or need advice. Hopefully, I hope for you and for every kid listening and for every adult listening, you will always have some set of humans you can turn to and say, oh, this just happened, and just unload and vent. Or, hey, I've got 2 different job offers and I'm trying to figure out which one, and people you can kind of share the pros and cons with who will give you some advice. Something great happened and you want to celebrate. You want to tell the people closest to you who are rooting for you. Like, we will always benefit from humans around us who care about what's happening and offer their advice and their thoughts and, a little pushback if you need it. Like, what, my friend, can I pull you aside and just say, can I give you some feedback? Okay. Well, sometimes when you speak this way or make these choices, it makes me like, sometimes, we need people to kind of hold us in check. What we don't want is to be reliant upon people once we're adults to tell us what to do next. Getting advice is different from they make the decision. Okay. You want to be off leash. You're not yanked somewhere by somebody, like someone's holding a leash and you're the little dog at the end and they're like, no, come over here. No, come, no, I said over here. When you're a grown up, you're an adult, no one gets to do that anymore. Okay. So I do think that the expectation that you have a summer job is fantastic. You need to earn money. You need to learn how money works. You need to learn how to save your money and spend it appropriately. And ultimately, you want your own money so that you can be more liberated and free. It's hard to be that person who's like, you know what? I'm not going to college. I'm going to be a whitewater rafting instructor, which is perfectly valid. I'm not here to say it's not, but you'd better be able to support yourself in that job. It's hard to say, no, I want to do this, but I still need y'all to be paying for my room and board, So the more financially independent you are, the more you can say, all right, guess what? I've decided I want to do this and here's my plan and I love y'all and I'd love your advice, but ultimately, I need to give this a try because it's calling to me. So I think the summer job is valuable, but you should get to choose what the summer job is. Like maybe there's an expectation that we work in this family. Great. Parents have the right to do that. But you ought to have a lot of say over what that summer job is and where you go after you graduate high school and what you choose to study once you're there and the jobs you do in the summer. They should all be, let me tell you, Gavin, when I was a college dean working with people just 1 year older than you, they would say, what do I do for the summer job? What do I do for my major? You know, should I do this or this? And I said, you know what? I don't know. It's your life. I literally do not know the answer. You know the answer. Let me ask you, why are you thinking of this versus that? What are the pros and cons? You know, what might you miss out on if you choose this? What might you gain if you choose this? Ultimately, your job is to figure out, what am I actually good at? And what do I actually love? And what lies at the intersection of those two lists? If you're great at math and everybody says you should be an engineer and you know you're great at math, but you don't love math, and you go into a career, a major that requires you to always do math, even though you're great at it, if you don't love it, you're going to feel like a robot in your life. And you will not feel successful, no matter how outwardly successful by societal definitions you are. I became a corporate lawyer. I was good at it. I was being mentored, given opportunity, earning a great salary, but it was hurting my stomach every Sunday afternoon because I knew, wait a minute, I don't love it. I didn't become a lawyer to help corporations. I should have gone into the type of law to help humans. Okay. I was good at it, but didn't love it. And it, however successful society thought I was, I knew I had to pivot and do something else. And of course, correspondingly, if you're just loving the thing, but you're not good at it, you won't probably, if you don't have a likelihood of getting better at it, you're not going to make that your career. It might be a hobby or a volunteer thing. So your task in terms of how these next steps, the substance that will flesh out which college, which major, which summer job, what after college, those questions can be best answered by you as you pay attention to where's that sweet spot of I'm good at it and I love it. And when you feel that sweet spot happening, when you get the evidence of what it is, you must go in that direction, no matter what everybody else thinks. And you will feel satisfied, joyful, and like you're leading a meaningful life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Louisa, you are up next.
Hi, my name is Louisa Metz, and I'm a senior at Glenbard West. The first time I heard imposter syndrome, I thought it was something that myself and a lot of my peers are facing as high school seniors going into college. With many responsibilities from school to jobs to extracurriculars, what do you think is the most valuable coping mechanism for imposter syndrome?
Well, I'll tell you that we've all had it. We all feel like imposters when we're young, trying to be something that we're not yet. Many of us feel like imposters for added reasons because of our gender or our race or our sexual orientation or our religion or some other aspect of our upbringing that maybe makes it feel like people like us aren't normally doing or allowed to do or historically have done this thing we're trying to do. So, it's a valid thing. It's there. But boy, does it really eat us up. I'm actually just going to pivot here with my answer and say, I frankly think that reading good stories about other people's struggles with whatever we're struggling with, whether it's imposter syndrome or anxiety or whatever, helps us feel less alone, more normal, more seen. So, for example, my memoir, Real American, could be considered a memoir that is a lot about imposter syndrome because I was made to feel as a Black and biracial person that I didn't belong. And then I began to feel myself like an imposter in the various places I inhabited. And I'm not saying you should read that book, but turning on to novels and memoirs and films and television shows and podcasts where people talk about imposter syndrome or feeling like an imposter will help you feel less alone, more normal in this identity. The older you get and the more you see the evidence of what you are good at and what you are capable of, the less you'll feel like an imposter. And the final thing I'll say is don't deliberately choose to be in places that enjoy making people feel like imposters. There are some careers, there are some communities where the whole vibe is about this sort of snooty, we are the people who run this and the rest of y'all are imposters. You know, those are harmful environments. And if you have any say in the matter, I would say if you sense you're going to be feeling like an imposter because of how they treat you, I would look for some other place to work or some other community to be a part of.
Thank you. Last student question. Jamla, you have one more question.
Hi, so my last question is, so at this point in high school, whether it be like junior or senior year, I know a lot of people my age are starting to think about their futures and what they want to do with the rest of their lives. And with that comes with a lot of goal settings and where they want to reach in the future. What would you recommend when it comes to goal setting for the future and not making goals that are too big? Or how far in the future should we set these goals ahead, whether it be education-wise, work-wise, or anything like that?
Yeah, goal setting is super important. I think it's a great thing that folks are doing it. Number one, it should be goals and furtherance of what you think you want out of this life. I cannot underscore enough that this is your life. It's your one precious life. Nobody can tell you how to live it. You know best. Once you give yourself permission to listen to yourself, Jemiah, you know best what it is you'd like to be doing at age 22 or 25 or 29, which I know feels like impossibly away right now. People in college, I think it's not unreasonable to plan out the next 10 years, but by plan out, that doesn't mean the lockstep and then this will happen and then this and then this and then this. In my book, I retell the story of a student who came in with that plan and it was so hilariously perfectionist and precise. I just, I was there to say, okay, but what if something goes wrong? What if that, if that doesn't happen? So what I'm saying is plan, but also have plan B in mind. Like, I think I'd like to be doing this and I'm going to work hard for that and hopefully it'll work out. But here's my plan B, or here's something else I might like if this turns out not to be working out for me for any number of reasons. It's recognizing with some respect and deference and humility to the universe or God or however you believe everything sort of happens. Like, so much is out of your control. So you can plan, which really helps you focus, but be humble and be aware. Stuff's going to happen. Stuff's going to go wrong. I'm not going to get this thing that I wanted. This door closes, another door opens. Accepting that much is out of your control shows you what you can be in control of and gives you a lot of relief around the stress of trying to manage everything. Most of what happens in life is out of your control. And the sooner you can appreciate and respect that, and then focus on your hard work, your character, being able to cope with setbacks, that's going to be whatever it is you end up doing. Those are going to be kind of the rudder. Those are going to be the things that just ensure like, yep, you've got this. You're going to be absolutely fine, more than fine. You're going to be thriving.
Thank you.
Thank
Julie,
you.
You're
thank you. I want to show you a slide. I always learn so much from you. I heard you recently talk about, it wasn't even in the context of your book, but you were talking about the superpowers that we need to have now. And every year, Glenbard does a Live Life Well week. So I took those words, I ran it by students, they loved it. This was our Live Life Well week theme this year. Ignite your superpowers, mindfulness, gratitude, and kindness.
I love it. It's actually chapter 11 of the book, or 12 of the book, is Unleash Your Superpowers. And
we got it from you.
I love it. And here's the point. These are powers. I don't care what your background or identity, what you want to study or be and do in life. We all have these three powers within us. They're sort of little tiny seeds within us. And if we pay attention to them, we water them, we nourish them, they grow. Mindfulness is being in charge, aware of what's going on in your body and your mind. So you don't blurt things out. You don't inadvertently offend someone because you didn't think it through, or you don't get overreactive or overly defensive. It's a way of self-regulating so that you can choose how to be and how to respond and how to act. Kindness, we've talked about, is just kind acts to other humans, but boy, the ripple effect throughout the world. And gratitude is being able to appreciate the things you have right now. Like, I'm grateful that Gilda has the Glenbard Parent Series because, you know, she's allowing me to come and do my work in her community. And I'm grateful for the tech people who have figured out how we can talk to each other during a pandemic. And I'm grateful that my partner right now is making me some dinner because it's getting to be dinner time, my time. The more we can articulate the things we're grateful for, the happier we become with the life we're already leading. When we're able to express gratitude, what we already have becomes enough. It's a way to really get out of the imposter and the striving, and I'll never be like, no, no, no. It allows you to just interrogate what you do actually have. And it helps you bring more and more things that you will be grateful for into your life. So I do believe no matter what, if we can hone those superpowers, life will open its doors to us and we will feel that we are living a magnificent life and adulting.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. It was an honor to be the first of the communities to host you on this important book. And Jericho, we have a slide. So yeah, I love that. So that's where you can find Julie's books. How to be an adult, Your Turn, How to Raise an Adult, the Bookstore of Glen Ellen, Anderson's Bookshop, Naperville and Downers Grove. You know, you want this book. And, you know, thank you, Julie, for mentioning two of the speakers that are coming up next year. You mentioned Nicolene Duclef. She is coming November 3rd. So you can listen in. Thank you for that. And Lori Gottlieb is coming September 23rd. So I'm glad these are people that you also enjoy.
All right, Gilda. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you, students. Thank you. Be well. Come back next week. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening. You're the best. Take care, Julie.
Thank you. You too.